Welcome to the Data Dojo podcast, hosted by Adam Massey and powered by the Aurek Group. Every week, we dive deep into the world of data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Here, we bring you conversations with the leading minds who are shaping the future of these cutting-edge fields. So get ready to unlock the secrets of data and discover the stories behind the algorithms.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Data Dojo podcast. I'm your host, Adam Massey. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up because this one's a little bit special. Now, most companies say they're embracing AI, but very few actually doing it properly. So today's guest is Victor Bajanov. Now, he is the AI transformational lead at Quantium. Now, in this episode, Victor shares with us what it really means to go all in on AI. And spoiler alert, it's not just about rolling out ChatGPT and calling it a day. We also look at why they picked Claude over other major LLMs after running rigorous real-world testing, and how they're building AI swarms, which are virtual teams of specialized agents that simulate business decision-making. And yes, they've even built a digital twin of one of their exec staff so they can get instant feedback that sounds exactly like their boss. We're also going to get into some of the challenges of building out trust in AI systems and how to measure quality and what engineers and leaders should be doing right now to stay ahead of the curve. Victor's practical, honest, and full of real-world insights. So if you're into data, tech, or leadership, this is one that you do not want to miss. Hey, Victor, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great, Adam. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So I guess what I like to do when I kick these podcasts off is actually get a bit of background on the guests we have on. So if you could just tell us a little bit about your journey and where you got to today.
Sure. So I'm actually an actuary by training. So I did actuarial studies at ANU way back in the day and in general insurance. And then basically straight out of uni, I joined Quantium. So I'm employee number 19 at Quantium. And I've been there ever since as the company's grown from there's about 15 people up to the 1,300 we are now. So as you can imagine, I've done lots and lots of different jobs over that time. So I joke that I've probably changed jobs more than anyone who's, changed companies every couple of years.
Yeah.
Even though the name of the company has always been the same. And so right now I'm leading the AI transformation effort for Quantium, which about 18 months ago, we did a big pivot towards AI and realized that, not only is it existential for us in terms of the work we do being strongly affected, it is actually very much aligned with our heritage and our kind of wheelhouse. Yeah. And so our strategy is now to be all in on AI, and we're building up our both internal use and our offerings in that space.
And for those people who don't know, maybe you can give us a bit of an idea of who Quantium are.
Yeah, sure. So Quantium started with a group of actuaries actually from an actuarial consulting firm known as Trowbridge. And a bunch of them left and founded Quantium. And the idea was to use the same techniques that actuaries use in fields outside of the traditional areas where actuaries work, like insurance and banking. So a lot of the early customers have been like pay TV, telcos, and actually like an industrial gas company was one of our first and longest customers.
Yep.
And then about 10 years after Quantium started, the term data science got coined in Silicon Valley. So this was around the 2012 kind of period, and Quantium was founded in 2002. So at that point, actually, a friend of mine said to me, "Hey, this data science business, it's what you actuaries have been doing all along, isn't it?" And more or less, yes, is the short answer to that. So since then, we've been having a much easier time explaining what we do. It's just data science, and
Yep.
We've been doing traditional data science and ML for all that time. It was helping customers solve business problems using those techniques. And what I would say, we focus on the last mile of data science. So that's we're not building the technical tools. We're not developing new algorithms. What we're doing is using some of the great stuff that exists in the world, but gluing it together in a way that actually solves your business problem. So everyone's heard of XGBoost. We would never kind of like invent XGBoost, but we use XGBoost in very effective ways to solve business problems and help businesses, make more money, save costs, do better for the world and for their customers.
Excellent. So I guess obviously you mentioned there the all-in strategy on AI. So maybe you can just expand on that for us a little bit and maybe sort of talk about how you've kind of embedded that mindset across your business internally?
Sure. So I guess what it means to be all in is often underestimated, right? So all in really means you have no chips left when you
Yeah.
push them or push them into the middle, right? So in terms of AI use, it means that every activity you do, you start with can AI help me here, or how can AI help me? And maybe today there are some things it doesn't do very well, but you kind of experiencing that and learning that through trial and error rather than assumption or something you read. I read it's not very good at this, so I'm not going to bother trying, isn't an all-in strategy. And the reason for that is, it's going to be a very important skill on using AI tools is going to be the skill of the next decade. And it goes beyond prompt engineering, which has been kind of done to death in social media. But there's a lot more nuance to using the tools well than just writing good prompts. And it's not the kind of thing you can learn by reading a blog article or a book or talking to someone. It's the kind of thing that has to be experienced. Like if you're learning to ride a bike, you have to spend a lot of hours on the bike. There's no, you can't watch videos on YouTube about bikes and become a good rider from doing that. And so the strategy of all in is we want to get everyone on the bike, and we want them on the bike all the time. And sure, like people are going to fall off, people are going to, misturn, some wheels are going to get bent out of shape, and that's okay. That's all part of the learning process. But it's the fastest way to get upskilled.
Yeah. And you guys partnered with Anthropic. How did that all kind of come about?
So when we went all in, and that was a top-down mandate, so our CEO and group executive said, look, we need an AI tool for the whole business. So you can't be all in if people don't have the tools.
Yeah.
So we want something we're just going to license wall to wall, like even the receptionist is going to have this tool. And, we want to get the best tool. So let's look at what's out there. So we evaluated all the big players, Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude by Anthropic through a rigorous process, which I kind of drove. And, it's fair to say that ChatGPT has the most recognizable brand, right? I don't think I'm making any controversial statement by saying that, right? And so a lot of people default to just thinking, well, if we're going to get an AI tool, that's what it should be. But we said, well, we're a data science company. We believe in data-driven decision-making. And so we're going to make this decision using data. So we're going to gather some data. We got some evaluation licenses from each of the vendors who are very cooperative, very happy to work with us. And we put them through their paces with people running prompts that are, or tasks that are representative of their work. So not what a public benchmark score says, but what would I do if I had this tool at Quantium? I'm going to run that through every tool. I'm going to put the results side by side and give them a score out of 10. And we had 20 or 30 people doing this for a period of a few weeks. And then we kind of collated all the results together. And honestly, I thought at the time, ChatGPT and Claude would be neck and neck at the top. And I think it was pretty clear the other two were a bit behind at that time. But actually, that's not what happened. The Anthropic models really stood out as being superior for our use case, And so I would encourage anyone listening not to say, oh, great, well, therefore Claude is the model you should get. I would encourage them to say, what are my use cases and how can I run a rigorous process to gather the data for myself that is, it's not going to be reflected by a public benchmark that is, different questions to what I do. And so the reason we went for that is there's really no workaround for that part of the offering, right? The quality of answers you get from the model, that's the one thing you can't work around. All the other bells and whistle features like, exporting to PDF or web search, whatever, you can live without those. You can do your own web searching, or you can make your own PDF or whatever it is. It's not that hard. But the one thing there's no substitute for, if you're getting bad answers, that's it. You can't improve that. You can't work around that.
Yeah. And do you find, obviously, what I've heard about Claude is that it's a really good tool for engineers and developers to help them with their coding and things like that. Is that something that came into play while you was evaluating the different products?
Yeah, we definitely we had some technical folks in the evaluation, and we had them using it for coding use cases. And I would say it's really got a lot better since we evaluated it. We were evaluating 3.5 version 1, which is now there's been a version 2 and then 3.7 and then a 4. So we're like 4 models behind where it is today.
Yep.
And I'd say it was at that point like a bit better at coding. Where it really shone through was actually writing and like following instructions. So
Yep.
one of mine was I wanted to write an internal blog post for the data science community at Quantium, which is a way that I communicate some of my ideas to that group.
Yep.
And it wasn't my first one. I had like a bunch that I could say, here's 5 blog posts that I've written. Here's the content I want to write about. Copy my style and write the blog post for me.
Yep.
And I showed that to my colleague who has known me for 12, 13 years, something like that. We've worked together for 12 years. So she knows me super well. And she would not believe that I didn't write it.
Yep.
And at that point, I knew that it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. And I guess I know recently you presented at the AWS Summit. I actually couldn't attend. I was actually overseas, but I did read something around AI agent swarms, and I was quite intrigued. What is that?
Good question. So, in order to properly answer that, we have to take a bit of a zoom out and, and a step back, right? So, when you use any large language model, any LLM, there's a few things at play. One is the prompt that you write, but also there's what we call the context of that prompt, and that is all the other information you give the model to kind of ground the answer. So every provider, they have what's called a system prompt, which is a set of instructions that the model always follows. It's there. In Anthropic's case, it's published on the website, so you can read it. In the ChatGPT, it's actually proprietary and you can't read it, although various people have found clever ways of extracting it and posted it online. Then there's any files that you upload. They get converted into text and images that the model can natively understand.
Yep.
And then all of that stitched together, also like other features, so memory, things like that, all ends up as just like one giant prompt. And at the end is the prompt you actually typed. And so the management of that context becomes super important for any advanced use of LLMs, right? And the prompt that you typed is like the tip of the iceberg, and the rest of the stuff is the massive portion of the iceberg that's below the water, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so with any model, it can accept a certain amount of context before it basically doesn't work. So every model has a published limit, 200,000, 500,000, 1 million tokens, depending on what the model is. And if you exceed that, it just fails. But even if you're getting to like 50, 70% of that, the performance degrades quite significantly.
Yeah.
And so you to get good answers, it's really all about managing the size of that context and avoiding, just like you would with a person, if you're giving them information to do something for you, the more irrelevant noise that you put in front of someone, the more likely they will make a mistake.
Okay.
And it's the same for LLMs. And so if you want to have a use case, like the one we demonstrated at the AWS Summit was a virtual advisory panel. So we asked, like, what should Quantium's data strategy be? And we had a panel which is like a virtual CFO, a virtual brand and comms person, a virtual investment specialist, a virtual research analyst who had access to a web search tool. And of course, the intern whose job was just to do odd jobs and ended up calling my co-presenter Ben on stage and asking him some questions on the phone and then kind of integrating that into the conversation. And for each of those, if you just put all of that context into one big Claude or ChatGPT prompt, it's just going to get overwhelmed. And so with agent swarms, you can separate that and have each of those agents is like a separate entity. It's a large language model with its own context, but it's just focused on one thing. And then you have them talking to each other to synthesize like what would be like a group or a team effort to answer a question. But each one, the performance of each individual agent is much higher than it would be if you just got one LLM and you just dumped like 5 personas in there. One, it's 5 times longer, so you're in the realm of using a lot of the context and the performance degrades. And 2, the content is quite different to each other. Right. So you want one to be all about finances, you want one to be all about brand. When you put them together, it's kind of like, am I a brand person or a finance person or a mix? I'm confused. And so you're starting to get kind of bleed across. So you get the more kind of personas or roles that you have, the more benefit you get from splitting it into agents.
Right.
And Our friends at AWS hosted a demo using, it's their summit, but we used AWS Bedrock to build this agentic swarm, and they have some tech there that makes it pretty easy to do. So
That's crazy. Yeah. So like essentially building out specialized teams of individual agents that have their own specialities that can then communicate with each other. Is that right?
yeah, basically. So and then if you think rolling forward, in the future, you might have different teams responsible for a particular agent. So you might have a team of finance experts working with AI experts to build the best CFO agent.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And they really understand like what a finance team needs to do and how to do it well.
Yeah.
And then a different team working on a really good like communications and brand agent. And they have all the domain knowledge on that kind of craft, and that's embedded. And you don't, as the user, you don't have to actually craft those agents yourself. You can just pick up one that someone's made and know that it's kind of good for that purpose. But I think we're probably a few steps away from that reality today. I think that's kind of visible on the horizon, but it's definitely like an exciting way for it to go.
So I guess, does that link in with, because I did read about creating AI-powered digital twins for your leadership teams. Does that kind of link in with that piece?
Yeah, so we've that's an excellent hack, by the way. Like for a lot of reasons, I'll give you some of the examples. But the way it works is you can set up. It doesn't have to be an agent. It can just be in the short term, like a ChatGPT, custom GPT, or a Claude project or something where you've got a saved context. And basically, you write about the person that you wanted to imitate. Give it as much information as you can. So you might get some emails, back and forth, where you've sent. If it's your boss, you might have sent some documents and they've redlined the document for you. There's giving you feedback and written comments in Word or PowerPoint. So you can give it like, this is the document I sent, and these are the comments I got back, right? And from that, you instruct it to like extract the way that this person is thinking, what is the kind of feedback they're likely to give. And if you have a few examples, you can distill that down into like a guide document that says, this is, I'm going to use the example Ben, because Ben Chan is my boss, the Quantium COO. And so we've created with his obviously participation and support, we've created Ben Bot, who's even got a picture. He's like a cyborg Ben with a very, hard jawline made of metal. And now if I want Ben to review something, or if I want to draft an email that Ben has to send or something like that, I can use Ben Bot to help me. So I can give Ben Bot a document and say, here's my first draft of this thing that Ben's asked me to do. What do you think? And it's going to give me feedback that very likely mirrors what Ben would say without wasting his time. And if I'm new to the team, maybe I don't know Ben that well because I just joined, we don't have a long standing relationship. In that case, BenBot becomes really valuable because it's on 24/7. It never gets tired of my stupid questions. And it's always happy to give me constructive feedback and decompose it blow by blow into like, this is why I'm telling you this, in a way that a person would probably not have the patience to do, quite frankly, right? And so it becomes a really valuable kind of a team cohesion and learning tool.
Yeah. And I guess one thing that we mentioned offline is measuring quality in AI and how you build trust. So when you're implementing these systems, how you able to measure that, I guess.
Yeah. So I think right now we're at the stage of, things that are Claude projects or custom GPTs where you just kind of, there's one interaction with the model and you just look at the results, and there's some techniques you can use for fact checking. And so you might ask it, actually, just a simple prompt, are you sure? Reduces errors by like 90%. We just get the LLM to check itself. It's like, sounds too good to be true, but it actually works. But the point is, like, let's say it's 95% accurate in something. That's 1 in 20 prompts that's going to give you something fishy. And you're reading that directly. So you probably catch that 99% of the time. You'll know like, hey, this doesn't pass my smell test. I'm going to extra check this either manually or using the model. And that's fine. So for today, that's working. As soon as you start chaining together multiple invocations, then the errors compound, right? So if you've got 5 steps and they're each 95%, then it's kind of like a 40% chance at the end that the answer is correct, right? Or whatever it is, 80, 70, 80, right? So the more steps you chain, the worse it gets. And very quickly, even if you have a 99% individual probability on each step, but you have a lot of steps, it very quickly compounds and gets below an acceptable threshold. And by the way, a lot of data science and AI use cases, they don't have this 80-20 Pareto principle where you get 80% of the value from 20% of the accuracy. That doesn't work, right?
Okay.
It's more like you need to get above a threshold where the thing is useful. And until you reach that threshold, you have zero utility, right? So an example that's very easy to understand, self-driving cars that have been, I think actually I was in San Francisco early this year and I took some rides in a Waymo and it was very impressive.
Yeah.
But this is the first year really, like last year they launched to the public.
Yeah.
And yet for decades, it's been like 2 or 3 years away. And the reason for that is no one will get into a car that's 98% accurate.
Yeah.
Right. So until you get it to a really like 5 nines level of accuracy, that product might as well not exist from the point of view of a consumer. It's very interesting as a research task. So you get this paradox where you'd say, this is very impressive. I would instantly hire any of the people who worked on it, but I would never use it myself as a product. Right. And you can get, voice recognition, handwriting recognition. They're all use cases where people experience this. Right. So I have a phone with a stylus and it recognizes handwriting. And as a data scientist, I'm very impressed by its accuracy. But I never actually use the pen.
Yeah.
To be clear, right? It's not like it's just faster to type and swipe on the keyboard.
Yeah.
So if you get down to like 95%, that's probably like a cool demo.
Yeah.
Whereas to be a production use case, it has to be like really up above 99 for a lot of things. So how do we get that quality from 99% at each step to higher than that, so that when you compound them all together, it's still 99?
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge in front of everyone. I think in order to do that, we have to go back to data science principles and even things like actuarial control cycle. It's very easy to see that loop where it's like, measure, work out what you want to change, iterate, loop around. Just some of the ways you have to do it are a bit different. One thing that a lot of people miss is that LLMs are stochastic. So if you run the same prompt many times, you get a different answer.
Yeah.
So instead of like a software unit test where it passes or fails, you have to say, with this prompt, does it work or not? It's what percentage of the time does it work?
Right. Okay.
So I run it 100 times and it works 95% of the time or 60% of the time. And then every step is like that, and you get a distribution of outcomes. And again, as an actuary, that's not particularly challenging. That's like a very old familiar territory that we've covered in capital modeling and all sorts of other fields. But it is, I think people coming from a software engineering background have to make a mental shift from testing deterministic software where every module either works or not to every module works some of the time. The other big foundation of trust is security.
Yep.
So for people to trust something, one, it has to work.
Yep.
And two, you have to know it's not going to kind of stab you in the back. Right, to put it in a colloquial term, so it's not going to do something to. I don't want to swear on the podcast, but it's not going to do. It's not going to do something bad to you, right? So really, fill in whatever words you want there. But the way to do that is to have robust controls. And again, traditional software controls are difficult to apply because they rely on, okay, we've written this service, it does this thing, so then we can put some guardrails around to make sure this thing is always done correctly and it can't kind of like deviate from that. And so the risk is low. If you put in an AI agent, there's always a chance it goes off the rails. It tries to use some tool that it shouldn't. The most recent example is when Anthropic released the model card for Opus 4, they said in some cases where they were trying to like deliberately feed in bomb making instructions and similar kind of nefarious prompts, right?
Yeah.
And it had access to tools or the simulated tools in their environment. It would actually rat the user out to the FBI.
Right.
So it would say like, use my email tool to write an email to the FBI whistleblower email to say like, hey, Adam is trying to make a bomb.
Yeah.
You could come and arrest him.
Yeah.
Here is the collection of evidence I want to present. And, that's a kind of, not funny is probably the wrong word, but that's a toy example that people can have a chuckle at. But in reality, like if you use these things a lot, you see that it goes off the rails quite often, and you'll use the wrong tool or try to do something you didn't want. And so how do you make that a system of these agents that are acting autonomously? How do you make that secure? So that's another big foundation of trust. Right. And there, I think you have to look at systems that were designed for people. Right. Because we already have a framework for, I have an actor who may actually be not very competent or may actually be malicious. But that actor is a person traditionally. But we still have ways of designing controls around people that kind of make it difficult for someone to do the wrong thing.
So I guess how do you balance, I guess, the need to kind of innovate with having protection in place, guidelines, guide rails, and governance and things like that in place? How does that all kind of merge together, do you think?
Look, there's obviously a dial you can turn up and down, right? And if we look at kind of historical parallels, there's examples of technical innovations being made at the expense of human lives all through history, right? So like, testing the V2 rockets, they actually built them with cockpits so that pilots could kind of give feedback through the radio on what the rocket's doing. But, the end result of that is the rocket would crash and the pilot would die, right? So that's kind of, I guess, a social license or an appetite for how much are we willing to sacrifice to get progress. These days, I think, putting human lives out there is probably not socially acceptable. So I'm going to say we have to find some way to do the innovation in a way that doesn't put real people at real risk. And so, that means we need environments where we can safely test things. To bring out the tired car analogy again, you need a track for testing the car where the car can do whatever it wants. It can go off the track, but real pedestrians are not going to get hurt because it's a test track. It's fenced off from the public. And so but equally, the absence of such things can be a barrier, right? So we have to build the test track if you don't have one, rather than saying, oh, well, we don't have a test track and we're not willing to test on the street, and therefore we should just let that one go, right? And do nothing. And where I think a lot of companies are ending up, and even some countries like have different investment appetites for this stuff compared to others. I think there is a way of developing everything safely. Like, as smart as AI gets, there's always a switch you can switch off. And therefore, I think, like, personally, I don't subscribe to the scenario where the AI becomes super intelligent and then kind of breaks out of its containment and takes over the world. And
Terminator.
And that's right. And Agent Smith comes in and wipes out all the humans, just because of the asymmetry of control that's inherent in the fact that it needs power to run. It needs water for the data centers. Right now, people in control of all those things, they're not fully automated. And so there's really no excuse for having AIs that go rogue and kind of do real damage on the real internet. You should be able to kind of contain things for research. Where I think the risk is people thinking we've done the testing and it's fine, and then they release it and it's not fine. And that really comes down to, having good testing practices. Right? And some of those things are unsolved problems in the world today. So we need really smart people to keep working on them.
And were you a bit nervous when you jumped into one of the self-driving cars in the US?
No, because I know their track record's actually very good. And I think what people overlook is this is not the joke, you don't have to outrun the bear. And so the standard shouldn't be like, is this car absolutely safe? The standard should be, is it safer than a human driver? And I mean, with no disrespect to human drivers, like I've been on some Uber rides that are very, very hair-raising. And I'm sure everyone can relate to that. And is a Waymo or any other self-driving car safer than that? Very likely, right? They're very conservative in the way they drive. I have a very objective view of risk. Like being an actuary, I would say, like, well, what are the statistics? How much have they crashed per mile driven? And the answer to that is actually like a lot less than humans on average. So you're probably better off getting it. Actually, I've heard that it's getting quite popular with parents hailing rides for their kids.
Okay.
who need to go like from school to say an after school sporting activity or something, and it's all downtown, and they need to get a taxi from here to here.
Yeah.
Just because there is no human driver.
Yeah.
Right. So the AI is never going to kidnap their child.
No.
And so some risks are just actually removed completely. If you just look at a broader picture of risk than just the driving, the quality of driving, no one wants to crash, but that's not the only risk.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that if you do it on a holistic basis, in some cases, actually much better.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you, actually, obviously we spoke a bit about some of the internal stuff that you guys at Quantium are doing with AI. Is this something that you're now putting out as services into your clients that you work with as well?
Yeah, so we do have a client-facing transformation team and an offering, and working with a bunch of clients now. Some of them are kind of in the same, our traditional clients who've been coming to us for all their ML needs for decades, and this is no different. And others are new industries that we've really never worked with before, but kind of recognize our expertise coming from the background of machine learning. There's a lot of transferable knowledge.
Yeah.
And so, that's I guess a fast growing area for us right now. We also have an executive training course that we do called Executive Edge and Board Edge for board members, where it's about like how can you personally improve your use of AI to be more effective as a leader. And that's been very popular. Like it's a sellout. I think they're running 2 a week now, and they're like fully booked, and the feedback's been, 99% of people would recommend it, that kind of thing. So it's been actually a huge effort and strain for the team just to keep up.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's good. And with that in mind, obviously I've been to a few conferences recently where they talked about this, but where do you feel AI sits within an enterprise organization? Who takes ownership of that, or is it a joint effort?
I think every organization's leadership structure is different. So I don't think there's a one size fits all answer, but I'm going to kind of lean on a lecture I once saw Andrew Ng give about traditional machine learning, and maybe like 7 or 8 years ago. This is online somewhere you can find. But he said that when something is new, it makes sense to have a central team because it's difficult to find expertise in that field. And so a company might only be able to hire like 3, 5, 10 people with real expertise. And if you spread them around, you just destroy critical mass. So you're better off collocating them together, organizationally collocating them, not necessarily physically, but having them as one team that works together, supporting the rest of the business in some kind of engagement model. As something gets commoditized, then you might be able to have hundreds or thousands of people with that skill set. Then you can federate, and you can have, like an engineering team in every vertical, or whatever it is, right? So in future, maybe an AI specialist in every vertical, or a team of AI specialists in every vertical. And that's, I think, traditional data analytics, certainly BI, has gone that way. Data science, machine learning is rapidly getting there. And AI, I think, is still very in the early stages. So it's still very much like, even at Quantium, which is a machine learning company, like we have 200 software engineers and maybe 500 data scientists, but we still have a central AI team. Right. And so I think it's going to be a couple of years before the critical mass of talent who really understand this stuff gets to a volume where anyone can afford to federate. Obviously, like there are exceptions where, the big AI companies, the tech companies, who are able to afford hundreds of AI engineers, they might be the first exception, but they're really a special case.
Obviously things move so quickly within this space. What's the kind of next challenges or opportunities do you see coming through that are really exciting you?
So I think it is. I will echo that. It is an extra challenge just to keep up with everything that's going on. Like, my whole career, I've been able to read 2 or 3 technical papers a year and stay on top of everything you need to know. And then in 2024, it was like 3 a week. And now it's more like 3 a day in 2025, because, a lot of companies are coming out of stealth, and the momentum is just building up, and some pretty amazing stuff happens. It's not like incremental developments either that you look at and you go, oh yeah, that's cool. It is, a lot of stuff that you go, right, okay, well, we need to like relook at our roadmap because this changes everything. And that happens, a couple of times a week. So it's a bit silly. So it's very hard to predict what will happen long term. I think anyone who's telling you like 1 year, 2 year predictions, they're just science fiction right now.
Yeah.
So a lot of the companies that we work with, they've explicitly said our roadmap goes 4 months out.
Yeah.
Because anything more than 4 months, you're working on a basis of so many assumptions that it's just fiction at that point. It's no point planning that far. Having said that, I think there are trends we can extrapolate, and I might be totally wrong. So, like anyone predicting the future, prediction is very hard, especially when it's the future. So, but the trend is very much towards away from just interacting with a chatbot as an LLM and towards automating systems and processes using LLMs.
Yeah.
And so I think we're seeing a lot more of how can I have some kind of process that goes end to end that previously had to be driven by humans, and maybe those humans could, ask ChatGPT or ask Claude at some of the steps, away from that towards how can the human actually just review the critical points where their expertise is really needed. So we're taking their involvement down. Instead of saying, you need a week of time to do this, then last year we were like, this used to take you a week, but with some assistance, you maybe can do it in 3 days. And now we're saying, how can we make it so it's actually just half an hour, because all you're doing is reviewing the output, or all you're doing is getting involved at 3 critical points that need human judgment or intervention. And I think that's, again, there's a lot of learning and making mistakes in that, and some balls are going to fall on the floor. But I think that's the direction things are going, and we're going to see a lot of things kind of automated in that way.
Yeah.
And one obvious question people ask off the back of that is, what happens to all the people who are employed in that field, right?
Yeah.
So, what happens to software engineers when Claude can write in 60 seconds what used to take 3 hours of development time?
Yeah.
And I actually have a pretty positive view on that. Like, I think for an individual company, it really depends on that company's leadership and adoption and so on. And maybe some companies close and other companies open, right? But as with any economic change, but system-wide, like at a macroeconomic level, if something gets cheaper, there's going to be more of it, right?
Yeah.
So if in the early 2000s, we remember writing websites with Ajax and HTML, and it was just like hell on wheels, right?
Yeah.
It was so much effort to get a responsive website. And then frameworks like React and Angular reduced the effort required by 50 to 100 times. So now a single engineer can build like a shopping cart website in a week, compared to maybe that would have been 3 or 4 months of work for a team back in the early 2000s. And yet there have never been more JavaScript engineers than now at any point in history.
Yeah.
Right. And they're all, it's like, it's hard to hire them because the demand is so high. So in kind of broad terms, if you imagine you have a bunch of projects and they all have a benefit and the cost and an ROI, and you say, for anything above the ROI hurdle, we can raise capital to do this. And for anything below, we're not going to do this because we're not interested. And then someone says, I have a magic wand that will halve the cost of everything. So then what happens? Do you need more people or less people? And if it's like a normal kind of power law distribution in the tail, you're going to need more people, because you're going to drive that bar down and you're going to get massively across in the tail. So what we're going to see is, so if writing software gets much easier, which is looking like that's the case, you're going to see a lot more people writing software who previously just wouldn't have bothered. It would be just out of their reach to even consider. If someone automates basic legal advice and says, you can now have a law GPT or whatever, Claude, right?
Yeah.
With a W. You can now have that instead of having to hire a solicitor at $500 an hour. It doesn't mean that solicitors just might as well, find something else to do.
Yeah.
I think what it means is a lot of people will go and pay that $20 subscription to get some basic advice, who previously would never even have considered a solicitor's fee, because it's just like out of reach for them, or it's not worth it for the matter at hand.
Yeah.
And so the upshot of that is people's quality of life should go up, right? Like the access to real quality professional outputs increases. And so everyone's quality of life should improve.
Yeah. I think it's a case of evolving. These things come in and they have done for years, and they change people's jobs. They change the way people approach their work. So it's just a case of evolution. And I guess just one thing I want to just end on really, maybe, because we do get a lot of like engineers and software developers and that like listening to this podcast. So what advice would you give to those guys in terms of utilizing AI and getting ahead of the game, I guess?
Yeah, look, I would go back to what I said at the start, which is, if you want to learn to ride a bike, you got to be on the bike.
Yeah.
There's no substitute. So if you're thinking about how you might use AI in your job, stop thinking and start using, right? And get it wrong. And, take a week to do something that would have taken 3 days because you wasted 2 days wrangling the AI and got nowhere. And that's a learning experience. But pretty quickly, you're going to start seeing gains. You're going to start seeing these moments of magic where you go, hey, it just did something for me in like instantly that would really have taken me like a day worth of work. It just documented my entire pull request flawlessly in one shot, right? That's the kind of thing you'll get from the Claude 4 models, right? So I vibe coded for a home project. I vibe coded an entire application in Rust in probably like 5 hours of total. I'm not even an engineer. Like I don't know how to write Rust code. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the thing compiles and runs, and all the tests pass, and it's working as far as I can tell. For my purposes at home, it's plenty good. And so, if you're leaving that on the table and you're worried about it, the advice I would give is stop worrying and just dive in, right?
Yeah.
Like get in there. You want to be a year from now, you want to be someone who's got a year of experience using these AI tools, not someone who's just starting to use these AI tools.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, Victor, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Really interesting conversation. I guess for those who want to connect with you and things like that, I'm assuming LinkedIn, going on there would be the best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Going on LinkedIn, I'm reasonably active, so I try to reply to everything in a reasonable time, and pretty easy to find. So
perfect. Well, thanks for your time today, Victor, and enjoy your weekend. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Pleasure to be here, Adam, and thanks everyone.
Cheers. Bye-bye.